How is pay-to-play affecting high school activities both in and out of Pennsylvania? Pay-to-play is a relatively new option for funding high school athletics across the country. The phrase refers to the exchange of money for the privilege to participate in school activities. Pay-to-play most commonly refers to athletics, but can be applied to any extracurricular activities in the schools. Some states more than others are latching on to the idea of pay-to-play, and is beginning to affect more and more people every single year. The idea of pay-to-pay can be traced back to the case of Hartzell versus Connell in 1984. In this case, taxpayers filed a suit against the Santa Barbara School District when it began requiring students to pay for extracurricular activities, including band and drama. The court ruled that educational opportunities must be provided to all students without regard to their family's ability or willingness to pay fees. Despite this, school fees continued to pop up. Now, as budgets are continuously being cut, pay-to-play fees are becoming increasingly visible across the country. Now, close to 40% of the high schools in the United States are charging pay-to-play fees, causing controversy in more and more districts. First, let's take a look at how pay-to-play systems are affecting school districts outside of Pennsylvania. Tenured coaches are speaking out about the differences between coaching a team a decade or two ago compared to now. Teams used to have so much more money to spend, and now teams have to rely more on fundraising and team fees. Some schools in Ann Arbor, Michigan, are cutting their athletic budgets by astonishing figures, with some cutting up to around $3 million. Schools on average in Michigan are charging $250 worth of one-time only pay-to-play fees. Fees are also much higher for sports with more equipment such as hockey and football, with players spending as much as $1,000 for the season. These fees are forcing schools and teams to rely on fundraising to make it through the season. These fees are impacting all different types of people within the school districts. One of the major groups affected by these pay-to-play fees are economically disadvantaged students. Fees have forced kids in lower-income families to the sidelines, according to a national poll that found nearly 1 in 5 lower-income parents report their children are participating less in school sports. Only 6% of families are receiving a waiver of pay-to-play fees, which is preventing low-income families from letting their children participate. In addition to low-income families, multiple-child families are also being forced to cut down on participation. With more kids in the household participating, parents are finding it difficult to cover the fees. Multi-sport athletes are especially struggling, with many having to limit their skills to one sport. In addition, sports receiving no funding require higher fees, meaning that athletes like lacrosse players and bowlers have to pay more for their respective sports. Because of the high fees and high impact that pay-to-play is implementing, participation is being affected. 1/4 of lower-income families have been forced to cut sport participation due to increasing costs. This is becoming a theme for pay-to-play. The groups suffering the most from pay-to-play are lower-income families and economically disadvantaged students. Although the fees are becoming more difficult for the average income families to pay, they are still generally able to afford them. Families who are earning less than $60,000 are seeing a 20% decrease in participation, compared to the 5% decrease in households earning more than $60,000 annually. One cause of the decrease in participation is that families simply cannot afford the costs. Another reason why participation is decreasing is because economically disadvantaged students are refraining from asking for assistance. Although there are options put in place to help lower-income students, they are neglecting it because of the fear of social judgment. Pennsylvania has also been active in implementing pay-to-play plans. Studies have shown that only 17.5% of schools in Pennsylvania are charging fees for extracurricular participation. This level is significantly lower than that of the 40% of schools nationwide that are using a pay-to-play system. Going to a public school by no means is free, but the annual costs are generally significantly less than that of a private school. The same goes for the fees for athletic and extracurricular participation. Studies have shown that fees for public schools in Pennsylvania range from $5 to $50 per year, while private schools are charging anywhere from $70 to $300 per year for participation within their schools. The general idea is that since the families can afford to send their child to a private school, they should be able to afford the extra participation fees as well. In the state of Pennsylvania, state standards have ruled that athletic participation is not included with the basic public education that students are entitled to. This means that public school students are not protected from being charged extra to play sports at the school. Despite the Pennsylvania state standards, private school students are still at a higher risk for pay-to-play fees. Although these students are at a higher risk, they are generally less affected by the fees. Public school students are impacted more by pay-to-play payments because of the lower average income of public school families. Within the public schools, more and more booster clubs are being created for a wider range of sports to help assist with the finances for interscholastic sports. Booster clubs, in addition to fundraising, are taking much more responsibility and helping decrease fees for the students. Based on the impacts of pay-to-play, one can assume how participation is affected. Participation has been on a heavy decline in public school districts adopting pay-to-play systems. In comparison, private school districts are noticing a relatively stable participation within their programs. Some schools are working to help increase participation despite the growing popularity of pay-to-play systems. For example, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, they have worked to increase participation by funding, rather than cutting, middle school sports. To learn more about the pay-to-play movement around the York College community, I decided to interview my boss, Mr. Jim Mustard, who is the athletic director at York Country Day School. York Country Day is a private progressive school that serves a little over 200 students through grades K through 12 and offers athletic programs at every grade level. The school has a very high athletic participation rate, and students usually participate in more than one sport. When speaking to Mr. Mustard, he noted that the board had discussed implementing a pay-to-play system in the past, but nothing has officially been set. The school was worried that extra fees would hurt their high participation and would prevent their students from getting the most out of their education opportunities. Overall, pay-to-play certainly has an effect throughout the country. Studies have shown that the rate and fees of pay-to-play are noticeably higher in districts outside of Pennsylvania. Within Pennsylvania, however, there is a much lower rate of pay-to-play systems within the districts, and participation is much higher. The groups that are impacted the most by pay-to-play are lower-income families and public school students with lowered participation in both groups. Public schools also charge less for their pay-to-play programs, while private schools charge significantly higher. Private schools, however, see little impacts on their participation rates. Pay-to-play is an increasing problem in the United States, and if it continues to grow, it could potentially result in the termination of high school sports. Sports offer another way for students to learn, and pay-to-play programs are restricting the ability for students to maximize their learning opportunities. Hopefully, a solution to this problem will come soon, and high school sports will return to the way they used to be.